Hello and welcome to Underlab. Poor Asriel Dreemurr. The little guy's been through a lot for such a relatively short life. I don't know about you folks, but dying, being reborn as a flower, and then finding yourself devoid of empathy and compassion, leading you to kill your loved ones and friends over and over, sounds like it might just suck. At least, a little bit. Well, it's a good thing we can save him at the end of the game, right? Oh, except we can't. Not completely, at least. When we leave Asriel, he's doomed to turn back into a flower, without the souls powering him. It's an incredibly depressing part of an otherwise perfect ending. Now, before I disappoint anyone, there isn't some secret way of saving Asriel. Anyone who tells you otherwise is probably lying, or has been reading too much fanfiction. However, I'd like to explore the possibilities of how we could save Asriel if the game allowed us to, and maybe, just maybe, one day, they'll become a reality through a patch or sequel, however unlikely that may be. Okay then, well, without wasting any more time, let's try and save everyone's favourite cream-coloured ball of fluff. Firstly, a quick recap. How did Asriel find himself in such a position to begin with, after reaching the surface having absorbed Kara's, one of the two, soul? Asriel was sadly attacked and killed by humans who thought he was responsible for his friend's death. Retreating to the underground, he died upon the grass, and there grew a golden flower that somehow became fused with his ashes. This is surprisingly appropriate, as it's traditional at monster burials to scatter the ashes of the fallen monster upon their favourite thing. In a well-meaning, though misguided experiment, Alphys took the same flower that bloomed and gave it an injection of raw determination. At first nothing happened, but when she returned, she discovered that the flower had disappeared. The flower has grown a conscience and become the malevolent entity known as Flowey. He was only so evil, however, because he lacked a soul. It seems that within the world of Undertale, souls are responsible for empathy. Flowey thrived off manipulating the timeline and tormenting the inhabitants of the underground, until Frisk fell down, and as Frisk had more determination, they took control of the timeline. If we follow the true pacifist route, finally we come to confront Flowey after he ambushes our friends. Everyone comes to back us up, when all of a sudden Flowey reveals that was his plan all along. Stealing everyone's souls at the same time, Flowey achieves absolute power, becoming, as he calls it, the god of hyperdeath. The god of hyperdeath is none other than Asriel grown up, however. It seems that all along, a little part of Asriel was still trapped inside of the flower that became Flowey after all of these years. As the fight progresses, Asriel begins to crumble as he remembers who he really is. Desperately trying to defeat us for the sake of it, he eventually becomes fully aware once more, realising what a terrible thing he's done. Before he surrenders the souls, however, he commits one last act. He destroys the barrier that traps all of monster kind, fulfilling the prophecy of the Delta Rune. That says an angel who has seen the surface will one day shatter the barrier. If we make the trip back through the entirety of the underground, we can find Asriel in the first room of the game. He talks to us for a while, but he says he doesn't want to come with us as he knows he's going to turn back into a flower without the souls. Instead, he asks that we leave him be to his sorrows. And that's it. You can't do anything to help the little guy. I tried interacting with him 1,378 times and nothing changed. That's seriously the end of the game. As mentioned in his conversation after the battle, he's destined to become Flowey once more, which makes sense. He never lost the artificial determination Alphys gave to him as a flower, though he can't maintain his true form without all 7 souls. Therefore, the only Asriel who will exist from this point onwards is a spiteful little flower. I have to admit, it's not the most satisfying ending. I have no doubt that it was supposed to be bittersweet, and in that respect it's far more memorable than if everything had a happy resolution at the end. Still, here at the Underlab, we specialise in altering reality, so let's think of the many ways we could actually save Asriel, if we were allowed to. When Flowey became Omega Flowey, he did so for the use of the 6 human souls. A 7th was required for him to become Asriel once more, and so he became a grotesque monstrosity instead. We defeat Omega Flowey by saving each of the human souls, which then turn against him. Without them, Flowey has no power, and is reduced to a tiny weed once more. So my question is, where did the human souls go in each ending of the game? Okay, sure, so we see Asriel release them. The monster souls obviously go back to the monsters they belong to, but where do the human souls go? After defeating Asriel, if we go to the coffins inside of Asgore's basement, we discover that they're all empty, and apparently mummy wrappings are lying at the bottom of each casket. Did the humans get up and leave? If so, how did we fail to notice? I think what must have happened is that their physical bodies were allowed to fade away once their souls were released. But who knows for sure? We know that the souls clearly maintained a part of their conscience, which allows for them to rebel against Omega Flowey. But what if the souls were willing to stick around to keep Asriel alive if they knew he no longer wanted to hurt anyone? That would give us 6 souls, and we know he only needs 7 to remain as Asriel Dreemurr. Well, there's one place the 7th human soul could come from, if we were willing to make the sacrifice. Frisk shows a huge amount of determination throughout their entire journey, so much so that they're able to achieve where all else have failed, leading to the eventual breaking of the barrier. It isn't clear what part of the souls it is that Asriel needs to stay alive. Is it their determination? If so, perhaps Frisk's soul alone could be enough to keep the goatchild from turning back into a flower. After all, Frisk has shown that they're at least the most determined individual to ever enter the underground. But why stop there? That isn't our only option, surely. Maybe there's plenty of humans on the surface with determined souls who would be willing to help the prince. Even if there isn't, why couldn't Asriel be given the souls of people who are about to die anyhow? Does that keep them in eternal unrest? Or would their souls actually be quite content in showing the young monster never loses his mind again? Even if human souls aren't an option, maybe there's other methods. Magic is a force that can seemingly do anything with an Undertale. Who knows the full extent of it? Perhaps there exists an ancient spell that could resurrect Asriel for good, and even bring back his soul. What confuses me is that if he became apathetic without his soul, why was it that the souls of others restored his empathy? Is it really just because of Frisk? If so, couldn't he just remain with the human for the rest of his days, in order to remind himself of what the point in being good is? But then, maybe that's not really the point. When Asriel had everyone's souls inside of him, he could feel the compassion of everyone. Maybe that's what restored his sensibility, if only for a little while. Without such specific conditions, perhaps he can never truly be returned to normal. Of course, it was Toby's choice to write his character in this way. Is there a greater meaning to it within the scope of the story? Does it perhaps show us that actions have consequences, or that we can't always have exactly what we want? Well, I guess that's that then. Well, before I go, I guess it's worth mentioning that no, there isn't a way of saving Asriel outside of what we can speculate. However, I'd just like to say that I do wonder if the story of Undertale really is over. I know Toby hasn't mentioned anything positive recently, but ages ago the possibility of a sequel was mentioned on the Kickstarter. We all know how secretive Toby likes to be. I'd personally like to think that this story isn't quite over just yet, and maybe, just maybe, there's hope for Asriel yet.